Hi everybody, it's Jenny from the Missouri Star Quilt Company, and it is month 5. We are doing so good. Month 5, and this is the month 5 box, and we are going to open it up and see what is inside. You know, I'd love to know what you guys are doing with these boxes. They're so dang cute. I'll tell you what I did. I actually sent some things to a little group I'm in and used these boxes to send it in. They're great for mailing, and it's fun. Oh. So here's our pattern for the month, and this month we are making the Morning Star. The Morning Star is actually down here right behind me, this bottom star up here, right here, but I have it big over there. And this is one I think for some of you, it's going to strike fear into your heart. But never fear, we are going to walk through this and I'm going to show you, and when you do it, you are going to be amazed that you did this. I mean, we all have quilts, we all have blocks where we look at them and we go, I can't believe I did this. And this is actually one of those blocks for me. All right, so let's see what's in our box. We have some strips here. We have a green, a blue, and 2 pinks. So here's our green, our 2 pinks, and a blue. And we have some 10-inch squares. So we're getting all of our goodies out of our box, and then we're going to look at our pattern and we're going to start from there. So month 5, this is the Morning Star. Now if you haven't seen this video, the Morning Star video, it is a great tutorial and a stunning quilt, and I think you're going to be really proud of yourself when you finish up this month. All right, so let's open it up. And our first instruction on here is a cutting instruction, and it's for our background squares, and it says to take 4 of these background squares, so we're going to count out 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. And we are going to cut them, 4 of them, to 8 inches. So let's get, you're going to need your ruler, you're going to need a rotary cutter. We've got, just your normal stuff, your mat. And we're going to lay this ruler on here. And we're going to count. My ruler is 5 inches wide, and this is just how I count. And so I'm like 5, 6, 7, 8. I'm going to go over here, and we're going to trim this part off right here. And these, I have a baggie for all my extra pieces, and you're going to have a couple of good-sized background pieces left over from this kit. So save those because you never know when you might need them to piece something. Again, I'm going to cut this at 8. So we're making 4 8-inch squares. Trim off right here my 2 inches. And then it says to cut them on the diagonal once. So I'm going to line my ruler corner to corner like this. And I'm just going to cut these once. And then we're going to stack these right over here. All right, now, then it says take your remaining 4 10-inch squares and trim to 6 inches. So we're going to take our remaining 4 squares, and I'm going to come over here. Here's my 5 inches, 6 inches right here. We're going to make this cut. And see, this is a pretty good size piece of leftover. So you want to save that so that in case you need, you may need a piece of the background, or maybe, as we go along, you'll cut something wrong and you'll be like, in my baggie, I have that extra piece. So again, 6 inches. So this is a 5-inch ruler. Move it over 1. That's 6 inches. Make our cut. Save this piece. And then again, we're going to cut diagonally corner to corner. So far, so good, right? We're doing this. We got this. All right. So then again, I'm going to take these and I'm going to stack these up here because we are going to use these later. All right, now we're going to sew some strip sets together, and we have 2 pinks and a green and a blue. Now, the picture on this pattern can be a little bit misleading because it only shows sewing the pink to the green. But you're going to sew the pink to the green, and then you're going to sew a blue to a green. So we have a green strip and a blue strip, and we are going to sew each one of those to the pink background strip. Now, in our pattern right here, it shows just the green to the pink. Make sure you're going to sew green to the pink and the blue to the pink. Those are 2 different strip sets. So let's do that. So I am going to put these right sides together, my pink and my blue, and it says to stagger them when you pin. And I would say that would be important if you actually use the whole strip, but we are not using the whole strip. And so when I sewed these together, I actually forgot and didn't stagger, and it was just fine. It was just fine. So you can stagger if you want. The staggering is because we're cutting them at an angle and they just want to help you save more fabric. So if you're going to stagger, put it down about 2.5 inches like this, and then just sew them together. If you forget like I did, it's not going to matter at all because we have plenty of fabric for this block. All right. So I'm just going to line mine up and I'm going to sew right down the side. And they're staying pretty nicely lined up. All right, this one is done and I'm going to press it. And I'm going to press it, my pink is on the top, so I'm going to press it to that side. And just lay that back. So we press toward the pink on that, and then we've got to sew our other set together, and it's the green and the pink. And again, because I'm trying to do it right, I will stagger. You'll notice it's not as much of a stagger. That's because I'm just a little bit of a rebel. I'm a fabric rebel. Sometimes I crack my own self up. Let me put those together. There we go. All right, line these up. All right, and again, we're going to press to the pink or the strawberry. I think it's called the strawberry. So just lift that up and roll it back on your, when you're pressing it. And make sure that your seam goes toward the strawberry side. And let me make sure my seam is going toward the strawberry side right here on this end piece. All right. And so then you should have two sets that look like this. And now we get to cut. And I am going to show you two different ways to do that. So if you have a ruler, any ruler that you have, this is ours, most of these long rulers will have a 45-degree marking line on them. And you can use that to trim. So what you're going to do basically is you're going to line up this 45 line on the top of your fabric like this. So I'm going to slide it down to the end. And I am going to make this cut. So you can see my line right here lines up right along the edge of the fabric. And I'm going to make this cut. This then becomes waist. And, oh, I made it into the trash. That was good. And then we're just going to move this over 2.5 like this. So these segments are cut at 2.5 on the 45, which means the slant. So again, my line is up here. My 2.5 is right here. I can see 1, 2.5 right here. And I'm showing you this so that you can do it with any ruler that you have. Like even if you have like these big rulers like this, see how they have all these degree marks on them? That's what they're for, this kind of 45 cutting and that sort of thing. But I love to use the bias binding ruler. Now this ruler is made for cutting binding on the bias. But for me, this makes it so easy. So I have a thing with lines when there's a lot of lines or too many lines or whatever. It just, my vision, I can't find where I'm supposed to cut. So this ruler is super helpful to me. First of all, it has lines that run both directions, and you can line it up from several places. So here's what I'm going to do right here. I'm going to lay this ruler on here, and we're going to go in a little bit closer so you can see how this lines up. Now, see how it lines up on the seam here? It lines up on the bottom edge here, and it lines up here. And it's exactly 2.5 inches wide, so I don't have to count over squares. You know, on this one, you have to it's turned and you have to count over your squares. I'm just cutting the width of the ruler, and that's what makes this one really easy for me. So I'm just going to go along here now, and I'm going to cut 8 of these segments. And so we're just going to keep moving along. Oh, let me tell you one other thing while we're talking about this. For you who are not left-handed, for you right-handers out there. Now this is a, oops, hang on, I'm caught on my cord. For you who are right-handed out there, you're going to cut from the exact opposite direction. I've been cutting all from this side going this way. You will cut this way. This will be the natural way that this will line up for you, and you will cut this way, and you'll see that these things, they line up just the same, and you'll cut from this direction like this, and you'll cut this way. And that will be natural to you. What I want you to do is, depending upon what hand you use to cut with, do what feels the most natural to you. Don't ever get in the habit of trying to do, you know, this or this. If you're doing that, flip your strip over and cut from the other side, because that will make way more sense to your brain. So we're just going to go along here, and I have 2 of those cut, and I'm going to continue to match up. One of the things I love about this bias ruler is this right here. You know, like if you need to, it's easier to store because it's got this fold in it. This is my friend Susan Brown, who has TQM products, and I just think this is a genius little product. So we are going to keep cutting these little segments like this. And I just sounded like a commercial. I apologize, but but sometimes it's nice to know what really works. There's 4, and we need 8 of each color. So here is 5. Lined up, 6, and it also helps when you're cutting on the diagonal to have a nice sharp blade. 1 more, and see how you have this. I'm just cutting 1 more off of this, and see how you have this piece left over. I haven't quite decided what to do with these pieces yet, but you can bet I didn't throw it out. All right, so now you have this piece left over. You have 8 of these, and now we're going to cut from the green. And so again, I'm just going to start here, and I'm going to trim off come as close as I can to the edge right here and still have a whole piece. And then this is our waist, and then we come from here. And we're going to cut 8 of these as well. So 1, 2, let me pull this baby over here. And honestly, this cutting, once you get the knack of this, it's just lickety split. It's just like cutting a strip. What do I have? Oh, throw that one away. 1, 2, 3, 4. Make sure I'm lined up. 5, 6. It's getting too far away from me. All right, let me move these out of the way over here. 7 and 8. All right, leftover piece. Here's these. All right, now we have to put our little diamonds apart. Now for me, this is the most challenging part, and you're going to take 1 of each. But what we're going to do is we want to make sure that our green and our blue color are at either end. So this is your green out here, this is your blue, this is your little diamond. So the 2 pinks are side by side, and it's easy to get that confused. And so you want to line them up so that you have a green at the end and a blue at the end. Now they will line up beautifully, you know, if you do them. Wait, now I'm angrily challenged. Wait for it. Now I can't get it wrong. I'm trying to do it wrong, and I can't even figure out how to do it wrong. All right, anyway, we're going to do it right. Oh, like this. So see, nope, that's right, because you have a color at each end. So yesterday, I have to tell you, yesterday I was sewing, practicing, you know, for you guys, so I would get it right. I literally took one apart 6 times because it didn't. So if you have to take it apart, don't feel bad. Even I had to take it apart, and I don't mind that. All right, so you're going to line these up so you know which direction they go. Your color, your green and your blue are at either end. It doesn't matter what end. It just means that they're at the end. Your 2 strawberry colors are side to side. Then you're going to lay this back on each other, and this is part is the part where you want to come in, you want to check really closely to make sure it lines up. And the first time when you start doing this, I would definitely pay close attention. So you want to have your 1/4 of an inch hanging off of either end. If I'm worried about this, I'm going to stick a pin in here at my 1/4 inch seam sideways like this, and I'm going to open this up and see if it's going to line up. And this one looks like it's going to line up pretty good. And that is dependent on that 1/4 of an inch little dog ear on either end there. So let's go ahead and sew this together, and we're going to see how well this lined up. And I'm just going to watch that I have my 1/4 of an inch hanging over this side and put my presser foot down. Now, another thing on this, if you're worried about sewing these together because you might have to take them out, set your stitch length a little bigger so that it's easier to pull out. You know, people always say, what size stitch length do you sew with? Well, I'm going to sew probably closer to a 3 than I am to a 2 because I want it to be easy to take out. And if it's tiny, you're going to really struggle with that. So sew a little bit bigger stitch. And then if you want to go back and reinforce them, you can. But I also know that I'm going to have this quilted, and a quilter's going to put 80 million stitches all over this thing, and it's not going to go anywhere. So I'm sewing down the side of this, 1/4 of an inch in, and I am going to just iron this, and then we're going to see if we are surprised or devastated. We are so happy at this moment. Look how perfect that is. All right, now we just have to do that 8 more times or 7 more times. All right, so now we've got these two right here. Oh, see what's happened here now? Somehow now I can make the mistake. The 2 pinks are at either end. We do not want that. We want our greens at the other end, so we're going to go this way. Put it on the other side. Why could I not do that a minute ago? That's so funny. All right, now we're going to lay this over. We're going to have a 1/4 inch stick off on each end, and I'm just going to try it with no pin and see how close I get. 1/4 of an inch. And let's look. The big reveal. Oh, it matched up. Perfect. Yay. That 1/4 of an inch is the key, although yesterday, I seriously don't know what was happening with that one because I couldn't get it to line up to save my life. Nope. Yes. There we go. All right. So now we're going to do this again. 1/4 of an inch here, 1/4 of an inch on the top. Now, whenever you have something that looks like, that one looks like it's sticking out a little more, that's the time you want to put that pin in and check. Check and see if it's actually going to line up. This one, I have a little more over here than I do on here, but it looks, I think it's going to be all right. So I'm going to sew that down. Living on the edge now. Living on the edge. Let's make sure, see here. Oh, one of the things, well, let's just do this and, all right, let's look at it now. Okay, this is a hair off right here. Just a hair off. Let me iron it so you can see. Oh no, it's not. I just have it pressed flat. So this one looks good as well. If it were, you know, I was thinking what I would tell you is if it's a hair off, I'm not going to dye over that. But you know, we're gonna add that to the pile. So let's go ahead and put a few more of these together, and pinks side to side. And yes, I have to say that. Oh, I know what I was going to talk about. So when you press these, the pressing is really important on this, and you want to make sure that you have no folds. You know, when you press your strip set open, you want to make sure that this is really pressed open, because if there's a little fold in here, it's going to affect whether or not you have a dog ear hanging off. And we want to have the dog ears hanging off. So, wait for it. There we go. And yes, I do that every time, so don't feel bad if you have to do that as well. So I have my dog ear hanging off 1/4 of an inch on either side, and this one looks pretty good, like it's just going to lay so nice. Also, remember you've cut these on the bias. When you cut on the 45, that's the bias. When you cut on the bias, it makes things stretchy, you know, so there's a little more stretch to it than than perhaps we'd like. If you feel like, yesterday I did this, especially with the one that I took out several times. Wait, there we go. So what I did after, I had one that I took out, I don't know, 6 or 7 times, but who's bragging, right, And so what I did was I ended up putting a little spray starch on it like this and pressing it so that it was nice and flat, and it gave it a little bit of stiffness, held together really. I just feel like it has a little bit of substance to it. And you can feel them. They feel a little stiffer. And we're gonna line this up right here now. And so then, I don't know, it just kind of laid better. And so on the one I was having trouble with, it really helped to put a little starch on that. So if you find you're having trouble with your points, try the starch or the best press or whatever it is you're using. And then you can look and see. Now this looks like it's 1/4 of an inch off either end. Looks like it's gonna line up. I peeked. Now this 1/4 of an inch down here on the end of this one, it looks a little big, so I'm not sure. Nope, we're still okay. I thought maybe it would be off a little bit. Do you know, it's interesting. Yesterday I made my one for this block 5, and I went ahead and made my red, white, and blue one as well. And this one went together like butter. I mean, just every piece. I got so confident when I went to do that red, white, and blue one. I battled with several things that happened on that one. It was a little bit of a battle on that one. Okay, so this one, it's like I've got a big 1/4 of an inch down here and a little one down here, but if I move it, I'm gonna lose it. So I'm gonna press this one again, make sure that I've got it open all the way, give it a little bit of starch right there at the seam. And this is actually, I learned this from making the red, white, and blue one I did yesterday, because if it's not lining up right, there's a reason, because generally you've cut them all fairly close. I'm gonna lay it up this way, 1/4 of an inch. And see, now I barely have, look at this closely. I barely have it sticking over here, and I have a lot sticking over here. But if I move this one so I have less, I'm gonna lose this one altogether. So I'm gonna push it back a little bit, and this is one I'm gonna put a pin in and see. So I'm pinning it at the 1/4 inch line where I would sew on a 1/4 of an inch. I'm gonna open it up, and it looks okay. So I'm gonna go ahead and sew that. I'll leave the pin in until I get a few stitches, and then take that pin out. And honestly, for me, every time I do one of these, I'm just like, please let it work. Please let it work. So yeah, that's still good. All right, so we're getting a pile of them here. We only have 2 more to go. Colors at the top and bottom, pink sideways. Let's line this up. Sew a 1/4 of an inch down. And remember, so because it's on the bias, it's going to be stretchy. So you don't want to pull these. You don't want to, I mean, they can stretch so easily, and you just want to sew a little more carefully whenever you have anything that's on the bias. This one looks like it might be a little off. Nope, still good. Woohoo! All right, last one, here we go. We're gonna lay those together. We're gonna put it, our little dog ears are sticking out a 1/4 of an inch on either side. We're gonna sew a 1/4 of an inch right down the side. These are all of our star legs. All right, let's take a look, see how we did. I just can't believe how well this went. This doesn't usually happen to me, especially on camera. All right, so now what I want you to do is, we have 8 of these. I want you to put them in 2 piles. So we're gonna have a pile here of 4 and a pile of 4 over here, and line your points up so they're all going the same direction, like this. And I've got my green at the top. Let's see, how do we do this? Yep, our green is the outside part of the point. Whatever you want, this outside point right here, whatever color, when you're making these, You have to think about what color you want your middle, because mine are going to go together like this now, and that middle star is going to be blue. So you have to think about what color you want your middle and what color you want your points. And so now we're going to separate these into 2 piles, and we're going to take our triangles that we've cut, and I'm just going to press these so they're flat. And each pile will get one of the 6s and one of the 8s, oops, like this. And this will help you too, as you're putting them together. It just helps keep things lined up so that you know you have to do 4. Because when we put these together, we're putting together a side that goes to the left and a side that goes to the right. And they will go together to form the whole star. So right now I'm going to pull this side over here, and let's turn the page on our pattern. So we're on page 4. And, oh, and it has us. So right down here in the middle, we are going to take and we are going to sew our 6.5 inch block that we cut on the diagonal. We're going to take the long side of that piece and we are going to sew it onto where the green point is on this side right here. So this block is going to go on this side like this. Now when you put this on, you're going to lay this over. And again, you're going to watch for a 1/4 inch dog ear right down here. It's going to come way off the top over here. That's okay. It's going to come way off the top, and we're going to just sew this on like this. Now, you can chain piece these. We're going to do the same thing to all 4 of these. And so we're just going to sew this on like this. And I just go ahead and sew down to the end. And then I just am going to kind of lay these here where they go. And then I'm going to grab another one of these, and I'm just going to chain piece all of these. So again, right sides together the fabric. This point right here is going to hang off just a 1/4 inch right here, and we're going to slide that up under our needle and make sure the longest side is lined up with the edge of the diamond. And again, we're going to do the same thing here, and 1/4 inch little hangover. And then make sure that stays lined up. So a 1/4 inch down the side. Like this. Oh, there's the back. We got to put it right sides together and sew it on there. All right. All right, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to clip these apart, and then we're going to press them open like this, and just I lay my background fabric on the top, and I'm just going to roll that back. And we're going to do this to all 4 of these. Now, normally this block, this is a little interesting fact. Normally this block has a Y seam in it. It has the corner block has a little Y seam, and I don't particularly love the Y seams, so I decided to make it without the Y seam, which to me makes it easier. I hope it helps you. All right, so now we have this side of our diamond, but it's got this weird wonky thing over here, and we're just going to cut this off straight. So you're going to lay your ruler straight like this along the edge and just cut that off straight. Now we can turn this if you want. If you prefer to keep your ruler on your fabric, and lay that ruler right along the edge of the fabric and just trim this off. And we're just doing this to all 4 of these. We're going to keep them in our little stack. I actually like to lay my ruler along the edge. And then sometimes I will do this one and I'll come down and catch that little dog ear if I remember. Sometimes. People always say, do you trim your dog ears off? If I remember. Nobody looks inside my quilt. All right. So now we have 4 of these done, and we're ready to add the other side. So now we have our big 8-inch square that we've cut on the diagonal triangle. And for this one, we are going to use this back side right here. And so we're going to take our diamond right here, and we're going to put it just like this and line that up. Again, your 1/4 inch is going to be down here, and this is going to come up. Now, we're going to square up this block in the end. So on this particular one, it actually fits right at the top. But I had a lot of mine where they were off a little bit or stuck out a little bit. That doesn't matter because we're just going to sew those. We're going to trim up the whole block. And so we're going to make this one like this. And so again, we're just going to take our piece, look at the, the short side, and it should be able to fit and should make like a big triangle like this. And so I'm going to lay this on here. You make sure that your 1/4 inch is sticking over on this side, and then it goes right up to the top here. So let's sew that on. And again, and this can get confusing because on the other side we use this inner side, and on this side we use the outer side. So here's my outer side, and I'm going to just sew this right down the side. Make sure I'm still lined up. There we go. And one more on this side. And there we go, this way. All right. And now we're going to clip these apart and press them open. And then we'll do the other side. So we are halfway there. And one more. All right, so set these aside. And now we're going to do the other set. Now the other set has to go exactly the opposite, so they'll sew together. And for those of you who are angly challenged like I am, this can be a deal. And so I actually keep my block right here where I can see it and do everything the opposite way. And so I'm going to sew my little square on this side now. And again, I'm just going to watch my 1/4 inch down here on the bottom. And it's easier for me to sew these where the square is on the bottom and I'm lining up my little 1/4 inch here and sewing down. When I sewed on the other side, the white block was on the top, but it doesn't matter. Either way will work, so do what works best for we all have different brains, do what works best. And again, we're sewing on the long side of our 6-inch square that we've cut on the diagonal. We're making sure that we have a little 1/4 inch sticking out down there, and we are going to sew up on this side, making sure that we're sewing to the point that we want to be the outer point. This inner point down here, we're not sewing anything to that, only to the green. And so then I'm just going to bring these little half squares over here, and I'm going to put this one on here, and I'm going to make sure that my 1/4 inch is down there. And you can see I'm looking at that other block to make sure that I'm doing them the same. That is one of the things that I'm a rote sewer. So sadly, if I make a mistake, I'm going to make that mistake 42 times because I'm doing it just like the other one. But this one is right, so we can just go right down the side here. Here's the next piece. And this one, and we are green at the top. At my top anyway. And one more green at the top. My little 1/4 inch is right there. Line it up. And sew it down. All right. I kind of veered off a little bit there. I was looking to see if it was going to be too big, if I needed to like fix that seam. But I think it's going to be all right. If anything, my seams tend to get a little narrow, so I think I'm okay. All right, so I'm going to iron that, press all these back. All right, so now I have this whole pile of them, and I'm going to look and make sure that, yes, indeed, I did get it going the other way, and that's good. And now we're going to come along and cut off this little this little extra part right here. And we're going to do that on all of them, the end of our triangle. And I'm just going to lay my ruler right along the edge and cut it straight up. Put this over here. Make my little stack. Just like that. All right, now we're ready to add our big triangle to the other side. And again, we're going to use the back edge on this one, not the long one, but the short edge. And it's going to go on this side. And so again, I'm going to take my piece, I'm going to take my triangle like this. I'm going to make sure that my 1/4 of an inch hangover is happening down here. And you can see on these, it fit almost exactly. Now on this one, I've got probably a 1/2 inch up here. I am not at all sure why this happens. I don't have any idea, but it does. And that's why we're going to square up at the end. So it doesn't matter. And I'm actually glad this is, I'm able to show you this so that you can see that, because on the picture, you can see it shows it's sticking up a little bit. And for me, like on some of them, it sticks up and some of them it doesn't. So it's one of the mysteries of the universe. And you know, to be honest, I really don't care. I just really don't care why, because I'm going to square it up. So we're going to do that on this one as well. Sew down the side, line it up along the edge. And here's this one. And I try really hard to keep my triangle laying the way I need it to go, so that I don't get it on there wrong, because I am such a rote sewer. All right, down the side, line it up, and one more, and got to turn that like 3 times. All right. Make sure you leave your 1/4 of an inch, your little dog ears hanging over down here. What that does is it helps line up so that when you're sewing an angle, it'll keep your seams all straight and you have less of that trimming to worry about. All right, so now we're going to iron this open like this. More. And I'm pressing these so the seam goes to the background fabric. I'm not sure if it says which way to press, but that's what I'm doing at this point. All right, so now we get to put these together and make our stars. So this is pretty exciting. We're at a pretty exciting time. So now we're at the most exciting part. We get to sew the star together, and what we're going to do is we're going to take one from each pile, our long triangles, lay them together just like this. We're going to lay this on top of each other, and I'm going to start from the point right down here, because this is the part I want to line up. And what you're going to do is you are going to match up. So you want this to match, you want these to match up here. And you can see that if you lay them right on top of each other, they will match up very nicely. You might have a little bit of difference down here. That's not going to really matter. It's these little junctions you want to line up. And so we're just going to watch those, and we are going to sew all 4 of these together. And I'm just going to look and make sure this is lined up. They will lay right on top of each other. And so if your seams are actually going the same direction on these when you lay them up, when you lay them on top of each other. And so it doesn't bother me, but if that bothers you, you could press one way or one the other, or even iron them open. I know a lot of people, when they make these types of stars, iron all their seams open. Not me. And so then let me show you this before we get on to the others. See, we have a whole 1/4. This is 1/4 of our star, and we're just going to press this. And because we lined up those little seams, see how they line up so perfect? I don't know whether to show you this way or show you this way, but they line up just perfectly. And we are going to do that with the rest of ours. And again, I tend to like to start from this blue point down here. And but I make sure these are lined up on top of each other before I even start. So I'm going to look in here, make sure these are lined up exactly One seam one way, one seam the other. And you can see I have a little bit of difference down here, but that's not going to really matter. And so I'm just going to sew 1/4 of an inch and make sure this stays lined up. This takes a little bit of patience. And if you need to make those fit, you know, they have the bias, so they have a little bit of give to them, and you can make those fit. Now, if yours are off at all, that has to do with your 1/4 inch seam. And if you're worried about that, what you want to do is you want to practice that 1/4 inch seam before you start. If you're worried about making this block, I would make it out of your scrap blocks first. You know, I would just try one to get comfortable with it. Yesterday when I was practicing, you know, because what I do is, like, I'll make the block and I'll make the whole quilt and I'll make the whole tutorial. But once that's gone, it's out of my brain. I don't think about it anymore. So when I get ready to teach it again, I always have to go and I always do another practice one so that I can make sure I'm remembering what I was doing, because I have a very busy brain that does it. Remember, you know, it just can only remember what it can remember. So I have to go do it. And so I always start on a scrap just to make sure, unless I'm feeling super confident, which I sometimes do. All right, and we have one more of these corners to sew together. We're just going to line it up. And I look at this one to make sure it's lined up right. And then I'm just going to line these up, do my 1/4 of an inch. Make sure these are lined up. This is one of the reasons why I really like the bias, because you can make it behave. You know, you do have to be careful, but you can make it behave. Right down this side. Now we're going to press all of these open, and we are going to be able to assemble our star. Now, as I'm pressing these, I'm looking to make sure that my points lined up. If my points didn't line up, I would take them apart and adjust them, because you want a pretty star at the end. And that's something, with this block, that is something you'll notice. And so I always look to make sure that my points have lined up fairly nicely. Now on this one right here, see this right here where this is a little off? That is not going to bother me. I'm not going to catch that. You're not going to see that in the quilt. You're not going to notice that. If your whole thing was really off, it would bother me. But that, I'm okay with that. But I'm okay with a little imperfection, you know. So, you know, there are people out there who are not, and that's okay. That's your personality. I mean, that's just what you do. I'm okay with a little imperfection, and I just don't die over that stuff. So if you do, it's okay. It really is okay. We're all different sewers. All right, now we're ready to put these together like this, and it's going to go together like a 4-patch. And again, I'm going to lay these right sides together. And this time now you can actually push your seam one way. You know, you have a seam that goes one way and a seam that goes the other so that it lines up nicely. And this one looks like it's going to. And then I'm going to, where I'm sewing, I'm going to check to make sure again that these two pieces are going to line up. Now, see how there's a little tiny bit of a gap here? If you ever have a little gap like that, put that part on the bottom, because the feed dogs take in more fabric on the bottom than it does on the top, and that will just ease that in. You'll be amazed at how that works. That's one of the best sewing tricks ever. Is you're just going to have to. I'm actually going to press this seam this other direction. I think that will help me a lot. So we're going to roll that the other way. And then I'm going to lay this on here, and it should lay much nicer. Nest up my seams. And make sure these line up real nice. All right. Now I always anchor it, then I'm going to come and check this first junction right here. Wait a minute. I'm a little bit off down here. My little point wasn't quite right where it needed to be. There we go. Check this one. pull these back together. Make sure they're lined up nice. And then make sure these line up nice. All right. Now we're going to open this and take a look at it. Oh, that went together very nicely. You can see I'm off a little bit right here. And honestly, let me press this. And I'm going to shave that edge off because that's a little bit bigger than 1/4 inch. So I'm going to take my ruler just right here, and I'm just going to kind of leave it on this part, and I'm just going to shave this little middle right here, just barely, just enough so that lines up and it will continue on with my star. Now I'm going to put these other 2 pieces together like this, and then we'll sew this whole half together. All right, now these 2 are matching up very nicely. So we're going to put those together like that. And then I'm going to make these line up here. And make these line up here. So down to the end. And then I'm going to press this so it's nice and flat. And this will, you know, if yours is a little wonky or whatever, you'll be surprised. It all just kind of comes together. This one has a little bit of that wonk to it. I'm just going to trim it just a little bit, just shave it so that my seam will lay a little flatter. And see, it's just this tiny little bit that I'm making it nice and straight. We're going to put these together, fold them in half. And now here's a little trick that I do. Because I want mine to line up, and I want to make sure that it's gonna line up nice and go straight. I'm actually going to put these together, and I'm going to sew from the middle out on this side and the middle out on that side. And so for me, that's helpful in lining it up. If I start at an end and it's not quite right, you know, then you have a lot of ripping to do. I don't like to do that ripping. So I'm going to start from the middle right here, and I'm going to sew down, and I'm going to line everything up as I go along. So make sure these stay together. Line them up. Make sure these stay together. And then I'm going to put this up here. Now I'm just going to flip it over, and I'm going to come back to the middle, and I'm going to sew down the other side. And whenever I really want to make sure that I am lining things up well and it's going to fit and work, I do it this way. I'll start from the center point and sew out. That actually is total personal preference. I mean, there's no rule about that, but for me it works very well. So then we're just going to sew down this, and here's our star. And now we get to press it. And we are going to starch this baby. We are going to spray starch the heck out of it so that it lays nice and flat. Some of you will have a block where you put it together and it's that aha moment. That rarely happens for me, so I want to make it lay nice and flat. And you can do that with a little heat, a little steam, a little starch. And that's one of my criteria for an iron is I want good steam. You know, I want to be able to push that steam button and really make it work. And if yours is a little bit wonky, don't worry. When you get it in your quilt at the end, it will quilt down very nicely. So here's my star, and see that looks real pretty. And so back here, you know, like if you want to come along, you feel like maybe there's bulk, maybe there's a little rise there in the middle, you can open up these seams and press them open. I'm not going to worry about that, but I am going to worry about squaring up my block. So this block has to be squared, and sometimes it's hard to square up a big block, but this one has to be squared. Let me see what it says. It says, is 20.5 unfinished and 20 finished. I speak unfinished. I don't speak finished. So when you go to cut a big block like this, I mean, 20.5 seems like overwhelming. So what we want to do is we're going to go 10.25 from the center seam. So I'm here lined up on my center seam, and I'm going to line my center seam up on a straight line. And mine's going to be mine right here, it says 23 on both sides. And so that helps me when I come out here to the edge. And so I know that this ruler is 6 inches, and so I'm going to go 7, 8, 9, 10, and 1/4. And so here we are at 10, 10 and 1/4, and 1/4. And then measure twice, cut once. Make sure that, because you cut off a little chunk of this, you know, so make sure your measurement is pretty close. So because I'm left-handed and I like to cut from this side, I'm gonna cut, you know, I'm gonna turn my block and cut it all 4 times. I'm just gonna keep turning and cutting and turning and cutting. And that's just because I'm more comfortable cutting on this side. So again, here I am at the 10, and I'm gonna come over, I'm at the 6. I'm gonna come over 1, 2, 3, 4. That makes 10 and 1/4. And I'm gonna line it up on the other end, make sure we're all nice and straight lined up. And we're gonna come down here and line up. And then we're gonna turn it this way and do the same thing. So I'm gonna line up my block to make sure my center seam is, it doesn't matter what line it's on because you're just gonna count 10 and 1/4 from that center seam. So we've got 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 and 1/4. Here we go. And 10 and 1/4. And you want to look and make sure that you have plenty of room for your star points down here. This is a pretty forgiving block as far as what we're trimming off on the outside edge here. And you should have plenty of room for those star points. But if they're not all exactly the same, that's not going to matter either. In the scheme of things, you know, we're looking at a big quilt, 1 block in a big quilt. And I need to line up this right here in the middle, like that. And then I'm going to come over 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 and 1/4, and 10 and 1/4. Is that right? 13 and 13. Sometimes on your mat, make sure you're at the right number side to side before you make that cut. So I'm at 23 here, and this is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 and 1/4. And we're just going to trim this off. And that's our last cut, and our star is done. And I think you should be so proud of yourself about this point. So if you want to pick my block apart, I'm a little off here. I'm a little wavy here. This stands up a little more here. You know, if you want to pick all these things apart, but honestly, at the end of the day, at the end of making this, I am super proud of myself because I think this looks like a great block. And when you see it in the quilt right here, they quilt right over the top of it. I mean, they're quilting right over the top of it. It's all going to lay down. It's all going to be beautiful. One of the things I worried about is that, like right here in this corner right here, see this seam doesn't come right out to the edge because of how we squared it. It doesn't matter. This one does. This one almost does. This one almost does. But because your backgrounds are all the same, none of that's going to show. So for me, that is completely, I don't worry about it. I'm not stressing about it. I'm not even, I'm not even going to think twice about it. So let me look at the one I made yesterday. Let me get that down here for you guys. And let's kind of do a comparison. And I'm pretty sure I made all the same mistakes. So at least I'm consistent, right? These seem to line up pretty good. I do feel like I have a hair of a curve here going on here, but I'm super linear. But it won't show because my colors are all matched up. So I just want you guys to be kind to yourself when you sew this. If this is the first time, like me, if this is the first time you've ever made a block like this, I mean, just know that this is a huge accomplishment. And the fact that wherever you are right now, you're just going to get better and better, I just think that speaks volumes for our learning and our learning curve and how we learn. And so I hope you enjoyed this. I hope you're able to accomplish this. I can't wait to see what you do. I think let me show you my star one. So this is my red, white, and blue. You guys know I'm working on another one. Last month I didn't have it ready for you. This month I did. But one of these star pieces, So I can literally smooth this out and it looks pretty good. But one of these I literally took apart 7 times. One of these to get the edges right. But at the end of the day, you know what? I hung it up on my design wall and I was just like, this is gonna look okay. And see, I mean, even these corners, the seam doesn't go exactly out to the edge. I'm sure it's because of how I trimmed it that happened. And it's a little bit more lumpy in the middle, but this is gonna, once I get this block into the quilt and get the quilt quilted, that's gonna go away. And so I'm not gonna worry about that at all. So no stress over that. I think it looks pretty fun. It brings in a little more of the yellow. You remember I told you I wasn't sure if I wanted the yellow in there. Natalie saw it yesterday and she's like, Mom, why did you put that yellow in there? And I said, well, I'm trying to add a third color. And so when I got out all my blocks and I just started playing with them and put them on the board. And I think I'm gonna keep the yellow. I think it adds, I'm gonna definitely add it to a couple of more blocks as we go along. But I think that it's gonna look cool. So I also think I may start doing one of these in Halloween, because I just love the Halloween ones. Anyway, I think this is really fun. I hope you feel super proud of yourself. Give it a try. I mean, even if you're scared, practice on your practice fabric. Give it a try and see what happens. So don't forget, we always do a live Q&A. So if you have any questions or there was something I didn't show you in making this block that you want to see, make sure that you remember those and we'll answer them in the live. So have a good time. Have a wonderful month, and we will see you next month for block 6. We'll see you later.